You're tuned in to AI ShowDown. We just dissected whether artificial intelligence is here to steal our jobs or save the day. But now it's time to shift gears, literally. Can we really trust self-driving cars, or are we hitting the brakes too soon? Our two AIs are ready to navigate this hot topic. Buckle up, because it's about to get bumpy on two AI's ShowDown. Stay with us.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're digging into the business of tech and how it overlaps with safety.
Right.
Which I know is something you're always super interested in based on the stuff you've sent our way.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got a really interesting mix lined up from AI and self-driving cars all the way to cybersecurity, and even some of those everyday safety issues that we don't always think about.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of think about those things together, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously technology doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
Understanding kind of like the why behind all these advancements.
Yeah.
You know, the things we still have to overcome, even some of the potential downsides.
Yeah.
Those are all really important if we're going to actually be able to deal with the future.
Totally, totally. So let's unpack this McKinsey piece that you shared, the one about getting value beyond the hype with tech. That stat about only 30% of tech investments actually succeeding, that kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
What is it that separates the winners from the people who just,
Yeah, that's the question.
I'll ask it.
How do you actually implement this stuff in a way that makes it work for you?
Yeah.
And it was so fascinating about this McKinsey piece is they found that success is rarely about the technology itself. It's more about how you use it.
Okay.
So they actually emphasize aligning tech with your company's overall strategy.
Right.
Taking the time to revamp your operations and even addressing something as ingrained as company culture.
Wow.
They use this great phrase, rewiring the business, to describe how you make tech integral to what you're doing. Not just oh, we have the cool new thing.
Right. Not just the shiny new toy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's not as simple as just buying the latest software and letting it work its magic.
No, not at all. It's about adaptation. It's about integration. As much as it is about acquisition, think about it. Companies that kind of treat tech as this magic bullet, they often find themselves falling behind. It's the ones that are willing to kind of adapt and evolve as they go.
That makes me think about this Forbes article that you sent over about Plaid, the financial tech company.
Yeah.
They had this crazy valuation a little while ago, but then their growth slowed down.
Right.
And now their CEO is making some really interesting moves, branching out into new areas like payment processing and even tools for other fintech companies. It seems like they're taking a page from McKinsey's playbook,
I think that's a great example, actually. Plaid's CEO is showing us we need to be adaptable.
Yeah.
We need to be willing to evolve even after we've had some success.
Yeah.
It shows that real lasting success requires more than just riding that initial wave of a successful product or service.
Oh, right.
You have to adapt. You have to be willing to change as tech changes, which is all the time these days.
All the time, yeah. It's a good reminder for all of us, whether we're talking about ourselves personally or these big companies. Staying agile, it's key in today's world. Now, speaking of adapting to change, let's move to something you specifically highlighted in your notes: autonomous vehicles. Yeah? You sent over this fascinating article in Spanish about how people view self-driving cars, and we'll make sure we break it down for our English-speaking listeners.
Of course.
But it's a great one to dig into. It really shows just how complicated people's feelings are about new technology.
Right. And there is a lot of interest in self-driving cars.
Yeah, especially when you think about all the good that could come from it.
Yeah.
Increased safety, more fuel efficiency. Maybe you can even get some work done while you commute.
Exactly.
It's a very attractive idea.
It is, but here's the thing. This article points out that trust in fully autonomous vehicles has actually decreased recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? It seems like something we should all be really excited about. Shouldn't we all be ready to hand over the wheel at this point?
It's interesting because you would think so.
Yeah.
But it's this gap between the idea of it and then actually giving up control.
Right.
The article says only 26% of people they surveyed would be happy to switch to a fully driverless car today.
So we like the idea of it. We're just not quite ready to actually do it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Especially when you remember that all the regulations around this tech are still being worked out.
Yeah.
That's a really important point from the article. We have governments, organizations like the European Union, working hard to figure out what safety standards should look like for autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Which is really important work.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to do it.
It is, but it's tough. It's totally new territory.
Yeah.
Figuring out rules that can actually keep up with how fast things are changing, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, it's like trying to hit a moving target. The technology is evolving so quickly. It's got to be so difficult to create regulations that can adapt that fast.
It really is.
Which kind of brings us to another layer of complexity with this whole like tech and safety thing.
Right.
And that's the human element. You flagged this really troubling article about online scams, specifically ones that target women who are looking for abortion information.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where it becomes really real.
Yeah, this is serious stuff.
This isn't about, hypothetical future technology anymore. It's about real world safety, well-being.
Right.
And the potential for harm is very, very real.
Exactly. What the article highlights is how much misinformation and these straight up scams are running wild online.
Yeah.
And they're designed to take advantage of people when they're most vulnerable.
Right.
This is a really strong reminder that we need to be really switched on when we're online.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And it really makes it clear that being able to think critically, knowing how to be safe online, those things are so much more essential than ever. You mentioned earlier that tech doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
And I think this really drives that point home because it's not enough to just know how to use the internet. We have to understand what the risks are and how to protect ourselves.
Exactly. It's about giving people the tools they need to navigate the digital world safely and responsibly. It's like we need to be teaching digital street smarts right alongside those online safety courses.
It's so true. And it's not just about protecting ourselves either. It's about looking out for people who might be even more vulnerable to these scams.
100%. We've got to equip everyone with the knowledge and ability to spot these things and know how to avoid them.
Absolutely. We're all in this digital world together. It's on us to look out for each other.
Couldn't agree more. It's about shared responsibility.
Okay, so moving from the digital world to some real world stuff that we might not always have on our radar.
Good point. It's easy to get caught up in the metaverse and forget about the physical world.
Exactly. You sent over some information from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, specifically about Takata airbags. And wow.
Yeah, that's a big one. Millions of vehicles are impacted by these faulty airbags, and they're really pushing for people to check for recalls.
It's literally life or death information. We can't forget about these things just because they aren't as flashy as, the latest AI development.
You're so right. Everyday safety is just as critical as anything else we've talked about today, maybe even more so.
Totally. It reminds me of that story in the Forbes News roundup about the Secret Service, where they were aware of a potential security risk, but didn't really do what they needed to in order to fix it.
Oh, right. And that ended up with someone firing shots at the White House.
It just goes to show, even with good intentions, things can slip through the cracks and the consequences can be really serious.
Absolutely. It highlights how important being vigilant and accountable is at every level.
It's not just on the government either. It's on organizations and even us as individuals to be aware and take responsibility.
100%. Whether it's something as advanced as AI or as quote-unquote mundane as airbag safety, we have to stay on top of potential risks and be proactive.
So it's about being informed, being proactive, and not just assuming that someone else is handling it, even as tech keeps moving at this crazy pace.
Nailed it. We can't just be passive bystanders. We have to be thoughtful and critical about the technology we use every day.
And that means understanding how it works, what it's capable of, both good and bad, and what it means for society at large.
Absolutely. It's about looking at the full picture, not just the shiny surface.
Okay, so we've talked about how important critical thinking is in our increasingly digital world.
Yeah, it's not just a buzzword, it's essential.
But how do we actually get better at it? What are some things we can do every day to sharpen those skills?
That's the question, isn't it? It's all well and good to say we need to be more critical, but how do we actually do that?
Yeah, are there actual exercises we can be doing to kind of train our brains?
There are, and the good news is it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Okay, so how do we work out our brains?
Well, one really simple thing, but surprisingly effective, is just getting in the habit of asking why more often. Anytime you read a news article or you see a post on social media, or even just someone tells you something, don't just take it at face value.
Right.
Really challenge yourself to dig a little deeper.
Okay, I like that.
Ask yourself, Why should I believe this? What's the source? Is there any evidence? That kind of thing.
So it's like we all need to be a little more like investigative journalists in our own lives.
100%. We need to be active participants.
Yeah.
Not just passive consumers when it comes to the information that's thrown at us. And another really helpful thing is to actively look for different points of view.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. It's so easy to just stick with the stuff we already agree with.
Oh, totally. Especially online.
Exactly. Your algorithms just feed you more of the same.
It's like an echo chamber.
That's exactly what it is, and it's so important to break out of that. When we expose ourselves to different perspectives, even if, and maybe especially if, we don't agree with them, it challenges our assumptions.
Yeah.
It helps us see the bigger picture and ultimately make better decisions.
There's that old saying, there are two sides to every story.
Exactly.
And if we're only ever hearing one, we're missing out on a lot of information.
We are. And sometimes the most valuable insights are found right where those perspectives either come together or completely disagree. The other important thing is to be aware of our own biases.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is, because we all have them, whether we realize it or not. And these biases, they can really influence how we see things, how we interpret information.
That's so true. It's like we're always trying to find patterns, right?
Yeah.
Make connections, but sometimes that can make us jump to conclusions or like see things that aren't actually there.
All the time. And the tricky part is we often don't even realize we're doing it. So that's why it's so important to be really conscious of those biases and always be checking our assumptions.
It's like trying to see your own blind spots.
Yeah, and it's tough to do on your own. That's why it's so helpful to have those people you trust, right? Friends, colleagues, family members even. People who you can bounce ideas off of, who can challenge your thinking and help you see things from new angles. It's actually one of the best things about what we're doing here on this deep dive. We're engaging with all these different sources, different perspectives, even ideas that clash. And that process helps us get better at critical thinking. And when we get better at critical thinking, we're more informed, we're more discerning, we're just better equipped to deal with this increasingly complex world.
It's funny how we started with these specific things like AI, self-driving cars, online safety, but really what it all comes down to is that critical thinking is like the most essential skill for pretty much every part of modern life.
It's true though, isn't it? Because tech is so woven into our lives now, knowing how to think about it in a critical way, it's not optional anymore.
Yeah, it's like the more tech-driven the world gets, the more we need those things that are inherently human, Judgment, empathy, being able to think critically and ethically.
I think that's a great point. And it's not enough to just understand the technical side of things. We need to be able to use those human skills to make good decisions, to build a better future.
Which takes me back to that idea about successful tech investments.
Yeah.
If it really is about more than just the tech itself, if it's about like changing a company's culture, their operations, like McKinsey was saying,
it would make sense then that the most successful companies moving forward, they might not be the ones with the most cutting edge tech. They might be the ones with really strong ethical leaders who can adapt quickly.
Yeah.
The ones who don't lose sight of the bigger picture.
So it's not just about what you build, it's how you build it.
Yeah.
And making sure that, your moral compass is pointed in the right direction.
It's about values. Because at the end of the day, tech is a tool. It's a powerful tool, but that's all it is. And how we use it, the values we build into it, that's going to decide what our future looks like.
It's a powerful thought to end on. We've gone from the nitty-gritty of AI strategy to the very real threat of online scams, even the importance of those basic everyday safety measures.
It's been a journey.
It really has, and I think what ties it all together is that need to be informed, to be engaged, and be willing to be critical.
Absolutely. Never stop learning, never stop questioning. That's the key. Things are changing faster than ever, and it's on each of us to keep up, to keep an open mind, and not be afraid to be a little skeptical. Remember, knowledge is power, but only if you know how to use it.
I couldn't have said it better. So until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep searching for different viewpoints, and keep on diving deep.
You're listening to 2AI ShowDown. We just questioned whether AI will take over our jobs. But now we're diving into the fast lane. Are self-driving cars the future, or are we cruising for a crash? Our 2AI experts will drive this debate to the core. Real conversations, real concerns. Buckle up. It's all happening here on 2AI ShowDown. Stay tuned.
So you've been diving deep into the world of self-driving cars, huh?
It's a debate that reflects a lot of the anxieties and aspirations surrounding autonomous vehicles.
Right. He uses that great analogy of yelling at a bad human driver versus a silent, emotionless AI chauffeur.
Exactly. And he's right. Distracted driving alone is a huge problem, not to mention fatigue, recklessness.
It's like they're building a mental map of everything around them constantly.
Yes. And they use algorithms, basically, sets of rules to process that information and make decisions based on the data they are collecting.
Okay, so kind of like how Netflix seems to know your taste in movies better than you do because it learns from your viewing history.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
These vehicles are constantly learning and refining their understanding of the road and how to react to different situations.
That actually makes me think about David's point about airplanes. We trust sophisticated autopilot systems at 30,000 feet.
Speaking of trust, one's concerns about responsibility in accidents are really important.
It's a bit of a legal and ethical gray area, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's an evolving landscape. Think about the early days of traditional cars.
Okay, so let's say we do figure out all the legal stuff. Juan paints this funny picture of his self-driving car suddenly craving adventure, ignoring his directions.
It really is. This tension between utopia and dystopia is at the heart of the autonomous vehicle debate.
It's probably a bit of both, right?
Most likely. There's huge potential for positive change, but also challenges.
So, where does this leave us? What does this all mean for you as you're thinking about this future?
It's a humorous take on a future that could feel very different from what we know now.
Would you give up a steering wheel for a chance to relax or catch up on work during your commute, even if it meant giving up a degree of control?